It's a big day after a long and a fun summer.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only negative is it's hard to see summer end.
I know, and it's hard to have summer camp end. We're going to let everybody join in and log on for a couple seconds. But this morning I paused the summer camp installment 6 group, which is a private group for people who wanted to share their layouts. You'll still have access to that.
Mm-hmm. Pausing just means that you'll be able to still see it if you're a member of that group, but there is no more posting allowed.
No more posting, and no new people will be joining. So it's just kind of it's static.
Yeah.
So anyway, so let us know if you are joining us, and if you are excited about your seeing all the quilts. I've spent most of the morning trying to scroll through a gazillion beautiful, so different each one. But okay, so let's
just dive in. You're here, we're here. We're just gonna get going.
So this whole Quilts First today. Oh, hi Nancy from Florida. I hope everything's okay where you are. This whole Quilts First is going to be about the summer camp modern mystery quilt along. And if you weren't part of that, we'll give you a quick synopsis of what has been going on since the last June. And then we'll tell you about what's going to be happening moving forward. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, now we're starting to see people show up. So if you've missed it and you've just discovered us, on June 1st, we started an online event that was a modern mystery quilt along called Summer Camp. And we tried to create an imaginary wonderland.
I'd say we created it.
Yeah, we created it also.
Yeah, it was a joint effort. It was a great community.
Right, and so we had a great time encouraging each other, and in creating this imaginary place where there were different cabins that people could live in and stay in and visit, and there were different activities. And it was just a wonderful escape from the realities of life. But it was so funny because there would be people who would stumble into the group and say, "Where is this place located?"
They actually thought it was real.
And we had to tell them that the pattern was real, but the place was imaginary.
And one of the things that was so joyful about this was all the sharing and encouragement that you all provided each other.
Absolutely.
And also, to me, it was kind of the best kind of quilting in that everybody was always commenting on how fun it was, how much it pushed them, how much they learned. And I think the group energy was really good. And so what's really satisfying is to see people put so much effort into something because they're enjoying it. And they're getting great rewards, the quilt and the community.
And we have to give Nancy, I don't know whether it's Zamor or Zamor, she was such a ball of joy in this group. And she would rewrite the lyrics to popular songs to make them feature the summer camp experience. And she was just a wonderful presence. So thank you so much, Nancy, for being a positive voice in our community.
Yeah, it was just a wonderful group.
Yeah. So go ahead.
So this, as you all know, is the reveal day. And the idea here is you've all been working a long time. Many of you have been sharing the steps along the way. Some have not. And we're waiting until today. So the joy for us is seeing a lot of completed tops, quilted tops. It's just, I think we created something and gave you a lot of choices and wanted to see where you went with that. And that was really exciting.
So we have been trying to go through the page. Just the algorithms are such that sometimes things get buried because we think we've seen everybody, but the notifications are kind of difficult because we get notifications that somebody commented on it, and then it just moves things around.
Yeah.
So if we've missed you and missed your quilt, please don't take it personally. We've tried to catch everybody and give you lots of positive feedback because really there were so many great ones as well. So we did get questions about our quilting pattern, and a lot of people were asking about
the actual quilting of our finished quilt.
Of our version. And I'll say that we agonized over it.
As I bet a lot of you did.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of discussion in that installment 6 group about when people finished the piecing, like what's the next step? How do I pick a quilting pattern? And that's a good question with every quilt you make.
Well, and we had the same questions.
Oh yeah. We didn't have a quick answer.
Yeah, and it was to such an extent we agonized so much that we developed a new quilting pattern specifically for this quilt because we felt like we wanted to do something different. And also we wanted to bring it for you too, because we felt like you were bringing your energy, and we wanted to kind of post something special for you too.
And I think just as many of you commented on how you had kind of design growth through this, we wanted to have that also. It's so
I love Nancy's comment about the unexpected outcomes were more precise piecing, color education and fun, encouragement for the quilters. That was exactly what we wanted. We wanted to create a community of fun and a positive, snark-free community of people who were just there to support each other and to try to use the pattern that we developed to make something that they wouldn't necessarily think they could make on their own. So that was the goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now, details. Shall I hold this up close?
So we developed this little twig quilting pattern, and what we liked about this pattern was that it had a little angle that was that kind of referred to the arrowhead layout. There were 3 layouts, if you weren't a part of it. There were 3 layouts, and we chose the arrowhead layout for ours. You can see ours, the styled photo is on the main Modern Quilt Studio page. And you can see the full thing. We can open up some more.
We have not posted details of the quilting yet,
but
we'll post that later and write a bit more about it. But I'm going to hold it up for a moment to talk about our approach to quilting. Very often, and the thread. Very often, many of our quilts, we free motion quilt. We decided that we wanted this to be dense and fairly regular, but we didn't want it to look too mechanical. And we have a Statler stitcher on our Gamma, which allows you to do computerized quilting, which we rarely do, but when we do it, we like it to mimic the natural irregularities of handwork. So one of the things that's going to be very hard to see, because it's a small detail, is if you look, none of the horizontal lines are actually totally horizontal. They all kind of angle about 1 or 2 degrees. There's a regularity to it, so nothing's extreme. But the idea is, rather than looking like straight lines that get very harsh, we felt like the arrowhead is already extremely graphic. And we wanted to add something that reflected the geometry, but had a little looseness to it. So even though it's computerized, we designed it based on how we quilt slightly irregularly.
Yeah, we didn't want something that looked like it was done in a factory. So,
right.
But the other thing is, if you look at the angles, we really wanted the angles to go in both directions, because we wanted it to be a pattern that could also work with other quilts. But what we...
Oh, I'm definitely using this again.
Oh yeah, we're definitely using
I really like this.
But if you can see, can you point to where the little, hold on.
Oh, here.
I got a little frog in my throat.
Okay.
The tips of the twigs nest.
So, let me see. Actually, can you point? I'll hold. You hold. I'll hold. Okay.
So if you can see here, can you see that this one goes down?
In between.
And then this one goes in between. So part of, designing a quilting pattern is that you want the overall texture to be consistent over the entire quilt.
And somewhat regularly spaced. If you have areas that are 2 inches without quilting and other areas that are densely quilted, you'll get a lot of puffiness, which in some cases might be what you want. But
it's usually not what we want.
We usually want a general flatness. The other thing that we think about, we think a lot about this, is the distance between the lines of stitching. And if you look, this is actually pretty tight. This was a very slow pattern to quilt.
It took forever.
Because we ran the machine very slowly. But one of the things we wanted, we knew there were a lot of half-inch slivers, like you see here, the blue and the orange. We wanted to have quilting that was going to be a little tighter than the narrowest piece, so that if you got shadows or you got kind of unquilted areas, they would always be smaller than the smallest piece. So what that does is it pushes the piecing to the forefront and helps the quilting kind of disappear.
So I want to kind of recap what you just said.
Please, which means rephrase it in a clearer way, which is great.
No, repeat it because it was so helpful.
Okay.
So I'm just repeating what you said. So one of the things that is really helpful when you're planning your own quilting is to look at the density of the quilting in relation to the size of the pieces in the quilt. So we actually went back and forth. And I think it's really important to kind of share our process.
Which isn't the only way to do it. This is just how we do it.
It isn't, but I think it's really helpful for you to know that we spent a couple of days.
More than a couple.
Let me finish. Going back and forth about the scale.
About the scale.
Because Bill originally wanted to do it larger, and I felt like it needed to be a little more dense.
And I will tell you that for those of you who have ever worked with a long arm, most patterns you can just scale up or down easily. We designed this exactly for this quilt, and I had the pattern all perfectly done, and Week said, I think it's a bit too big. And I just kind of sighed because I'd spent so much time setting it up, but I realized she was completely right. I agreed that we wanted it a little denser, and I didn't just scale it down, I redesigned it to work with this size.
I do want to address Wendy's comment. I think maybe there's a misunderstanding about what we said, which is we said we wouldn't do matchstick quilting, that we never do matchstick quilting. All of our, if you go back and watch the video, we share the density that works for us, and this is that scale that we shared with you. What we had said was matchstick quilting, we don't like the drape, the lack of drape, the stiffness of matchstick quilting, but this is about the density of all of our quilts.
It's a little denser than some, but What we don't like in general is if a quilt is so densely quilted that you actually feel the thread rather than the fabric.
Or that it doesn't drape nicely.
And this has, so we actually did test runs and felt like this draped beautifully with the batting we were going to use. So it is, Wendy, you're right in hearing us say that we avoid dense quilting, but it's all relative. This to us is just right for this quilt.
And I'll show you, let's show the back, because you can see it, again, always the threads. I don't know if you can see.
Can you see, or is it, I can't tell. I'm holding it in front of our screen. I actually think it's easy. I think it's easier to see against the marine blue on the front.
And we used a gray thread. As you can see, we used the same thread on the front and back. So we matched the back. But as always, with our thread color, we typically like to look at the darkest fabric in the quilt and the lightest fabric and find some value between the lightest and the darkest, and then go on the desaturated side, so more of a neutral. And that's a general, and we use the Quilter's Dream 100% cotton request loft, which is
their lightest, thinnest loft. If we decided to quilt this, let's say with wool or any heavier loft, I would have had the quilting be a little larger.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this density works beautifully with a very thin loft. But if you tried this on wool, it would just shrink the quilt down so much because it would pull everything together and it wouldn't have the same drape. So
let me grab one.
So basically, the density of quilting for us is relative to the size of the pieces, it's relative to the batting, and of course it's relative to, how it's going to be used.
And just as a reminder for those of you who have not seen this spread, we did an article in Modern Quilts Illustrated 15, extensive testing on 6 different fibers of Quilter's Dream.
For
batting. We did bamboo, cotton, 80-20, Dream poly, Dream wool, and Dream puff. And shared in the article the pros and cons of which is the best if you're going to tie a quilt, which is the most cost effective, which is able to dry quickly. So it's not, batting is never a one size fits all.
No.
Is the kind of summary of this.
and
lots of
for play on words here, this was a summery quilt because it was summer camp, and so we also knew that because of the colors and the memories, we would probably be using this in the summer and wanted a lighter weight batting. The other thing that Weeks mentioned with batting is cost is an issue. Cost is also something to keep in mind when you're quilting, especially if you're sending it out to a long arm quilter, because this, if we had been paying for this, it would have been much more expensive because it's slow. And so it's absolutely reasonable to look at your budget and say, maybe I love the dense quilting, but I can't afford it on this. That's fine.
And you want to talk about the thread?
Oh, okay. So the thread size, we use Signature 100% cotton Tex 30, right? Tex 40, right? Not 30.
I will check.
Oh my gosh. I've been using it only for 20 years, and it's actually, she'll bring a cone over and
Tex 40.
Tex 40, yep. So Signature cotton is not the most commonly used in the long arm community. A lot of long armers who long arm for a living use either a slightly lighter thread because this tends to create more lint as you sew, and because it's slightly heavier, less of it fits on a bobbin than a thinner thread, which means there's more downtime and switching. I like a thicker thread. I think
I like 100% cotton as well.
Yeah, but it's by being just a little bit thicker, you actually see the color of it. I think a lot of quilters who use high-end, thinner thread for quilting may not realize that when it gets quilted and it's in that valley of like the shadow, the valley with the batting, sometimes the color disappears. So I always joke that if we were famous basketball players, we'd get free tennis shoes. As quilters, thread companies send us sample threads, and I'm always interested to try it. I just go back to ordinary signature, which is probably the least expensive.
It's the least expensive, and it's either made in the U.S. or
this one is.
Yeah. And so that is also a benefit, but it's also more cost effective.
You know, it is, and they have maybe you can get a lot on spools, but on these big cones, I can't remember. There may be 25 colors, which may not seem like many, but it's always been enough.
They also have Tex 50. So
yeah,
and if you need a lighter thread.
And so there are lots of choices out there.
So, but I think the number one thing is that you don't want in general, unless you've got a design reason, otherwise, you don't want to have a thread look too heavy on one color or too light on another color.
And this gray that we picked really splits the difference. We wanted the pattern to be a little bit visible on the marine, and we wanted it to mostly disappear on, we looked at a slightly darker gray, and it was too obvious on the piecing, which was a little distracting, and it disappeared on the marine. But we wanted, there's so much pattern here, and the marine was so plain that we wanted to kind of go a little bit lighter so it creates pattern on the solid and disappears on the piece.
But I think the takeaway, even if you're doing free motion quilting on your own machine, is the idea behind the design, which is that we took a cue from the angles and we added just a little bit of it. There are so many great quilting jobs on the Modern Quilt Studio Patterns and Fabrics group.
In the quilt that had been revealed.
Really beautifully, well done. And it's
awesome.
I think one of the things that we really wanted with this quilt along is we wanted you to have choices about blocks and choices about fabric and choices about quilting.
And layouts.
And so we wanted to basically have people be able to get inspiration from the other person's choices given the same instructions.
And
yes, it was request that we used.
Yes,
Nancy.
it was request, Nancy. And so definitely what I'd encourage you to do if this has resonated with you is you can go back and look at other people's choices, which everyone made choices for different reasons. And I like to try to get in people's heads because you learn a lot. There's not one answer. There are some people who did some echo quilting in the diagonals that's really striking and beautiful. I've seen some where people use the diagonals almost as a sampler to try different quilting stitches, different patterns. And then if you look at the s'mores layout or the campfire layout, those are really different quilts. So they kind of call for different approaches to the quilting. And in general, we love having lots of choices within a certain set of constraints because that helps you understand the choices. It's not kind of a free-for-all. Everyone is responding to certain layouts.
Exactly. So why don't we just quickly, you want to just hold it up so they can see a little bit more of it within the scale of So you can see how big it is, and you can see that the quilting, even though we've used that light gray color, as soon as you get a couple feet away from it, you don't even notice it. So
it might at first it might seem too light when you're up close.
Yeah, but when you look at it, you don't see the gray, and even though it's Tex 40, so it's a thicker thread. So another tip that I always give people is to re-evaluate the narrative in your head about how thick the thread is and how much it's going to show, because I think a lot of people in their mind think it's much bigger than it is. And this is a great example how you can see it when you're close up, but as soon as you get back, a little bit, you'll be able to see it.
And that also applies to something we've discussed before on Quilts First, which is we often design quilts for viewing from a distance, from like far distance, medium distance, and up close. That if you walk into a room, you see the overall layout, there's something that pulls you in closer. You begin to see the fabrics perhaps, or the color better when you get closer. Then when you get right up to it, you're either rewarded with seeing the craftsmanship, the stitching, the actual fabrics if they're prints. So that kind of far, medium, close is also really part of the quilting decision.
Nancy Drake was saying that she wishes she had used a lighter shade of thread because it was too dark in the lighter areas. Oh my gosh, Nancy, I have done that and then spent a tremendous amount of time ripping it out. And it's just, it's experience, and it's also testing. We like to usually have a little bit of extra room where we test threads. But the one time that I decided I didn't have time to do that, I messed it up too. So you're in good company.
Yeah, but I'll also say that often you do a quilt.
You don't get to have this in your lap.
Often you do a quilt and you might say afterwards, "Oh, I wish it had been 10% lighter or darker thread," and that's fine. I mean, it's no big deal. You learn from that and you move on. You can still love the quilt, obviously.
Yeah.
But there are times when there isn't the perfect thread color, and so you make certain compromises. And I was crazy nervous about this pattern, since we never used it before and developed it for this quilt. And again, anyone who uses a long arm knows that things can be finicky, and it's not very forgiving if something goes wrong, it goes wrong. And fortunately,
so you can see a little bit more. Sorry. Okay.
It's big.
Yeah, it is big.
At least we didn't make the queen to show here.
Yes, I know the queen.
It was so great seeing
people's queens. We were stunned at the queens. Those of you who
kudos to you who
make the queens. That was really impressive. So let's talk about the gallery.
Okay, so
the virtual exhibition, I should say.
Launching a week from today will be a virtual exhibition of your quilts. And what we're doing is we're featuring any quilts you've made that are recognizable as one of the 3 layouts that we provided. We have all along, we've encouraged people to do whatever they want, but we're just featuring the 3 layouts because that's what we're providing help on. That's what we're But also, I think it's confusing.
It's
confusing. So,
it looks totally
I think some people misunderstand that, like, do whatever you want. Yeah. Absolutely. But for the gallery to have it kind of cohesive, those were the constraints. I was laughing, I was in a yoga class once where there was one person in the yoga class who just decided she wanted to do her own thing. And it's really confusing. I mean, I might be good at yoga, but if I'm trying to do Shavasana and the person next to me is in mountain pose, it's confusing. Yeah. So we are featuring any of your quilts that are one of the 3 recognizable layouts. People, we totally get it. Sometimes you had to make it a little bit bigger, or you had to make it narrower for something. as long as it's recognizable as one of the layouts,
Yeah.
great. So the way this is going to work, we'll have a post on social media tomorrow with a link where you can upload your images. But if you don't want to wait for that, you can go to our website and I can't even remember. Is it under, I'd have to look at the tab. One of the first tabs on the What's New page, and there's one other link that says Summer Camp Virtual Exhibition Submissions.
And there'll be something on the lodge, I would assume.
And it will be something, oh, thank you. Okay, I totally forgot. I'll put a link on the lodge.
Should I make a note?
Please make a note. How did I forget that?
Because you've got a lot on your mind.
But you can go today, if you want, to the link on our website, and there's a dedicated page that explains very simply, we ask for your name and your email address, neither of which is going to be publicly visible. And I asked everyone to put their country because it's
fun.
It's not publicly visible, but it's fun for us to see all the countries where you all are located. And then you can upload one image of each quilt you made. And I say each because some of you made 2 or 3.
That's right.
But just for the sake of the exhibition, in fairness, we're going to have one image per quilt. This isn't a photography competition. Take the best photo you can. It can be the piece top. It can be the quilted top. I am going to create the gallery, and that will go live, or the exhibition, that will go live next Friday. Anyone who submits after Friday, I'll periodically add those quilts to the exhibition. Just like the mystery quilt that we did in January, the New Day mystery quilt, people are still submitting. I looked this morning, I've got 6 more that I've got to add.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate that again, just to make sure people heard it, because there's been a lot of comments of like, why don't you have a second post day for people who aren't done on September 1st? Well, basically the post day is any day after September 1st.
Yeah.
And then Bill is still adding things to the virtual gallery from
half
January.
a year. Yeah.
So 9 months ago.
Yeah.
So we will continue to update. You haven't missed anything.
No, not at all.
You're not behind. You just work at your own pace. That is the whole goal of this. This was supposed to be an easy, breezy summer project.
The only deadlines are ours.
That's right. Diane says you two must be exhausted. Oh my gosh.
It's a lot of work. But the gallery,
yes.
I'm really excited. For the gallery, you can have a flat shot, you can have it draped over a chair, whatever you think shows off your work the best. And I'm trying to think how, we want you to get the best shot you can. There is a note of explanation that says, whatever the file name is that you upload may be a caption on the photo. And I say may because it's a bizarre system. And if I call my quilt Bill and Weeks's Arrowhead and I upload it, every now and then the system changes it to like 143228 and just puts a random number on it.
So can you pause for a second? And Elizabeth Buckley Wells is saying she would like to have everybody put their state and country without their name or email. Please understand that we're providing a free service here, and we have limitations for the amount of time that we can devote to it, but also the technology involved. So your file name will most likely be the caption underneath, and if you want to put your city and state or country or whatever, name your file that. But
and I would also
we can't. There's only so much as I like to say to people who call and say, I ordered yesterday and my order isn't here. We're not Amazon. We're like two people in our basement.
But Elizabeth, I'll tell you, I totally agree. I love to know this. One thing you could do is on the Facebook page, you could post your quilt also and just say, I'd love to hear where everyone's from.
Absolutely. Do roll call.
Just do a roll call and see who responds. That way, that's a great way to just take the reins and see what happens. I always joke that we started out being quilters and now we're videographers, web programmers, e-commerce people.
Logistics managers.
And so I am trying to have a gallery without doing too much programming and just have it be fun for everyone.
Yeah, we have over 1,000 participants at this point. So it's been a lot, there's a lot that happens behind the curtains. And, we want to foster the community as much as we can, and we will do as much as we can to take your ideas and incorporate them. But there is a limit sometimes to what we can do.
But I totally love. I'm not trying to shut down creativity here, and I love the idea. But definitely, if something like that occurs to any of you, think of a way. Like, can you just harness the power of Facebook?
Yeah.
You're all here.
You don't need for us to do it.
You don't. Yeah. Don't wait for us. And that gallery, though, is. It should be very straightforward. I learned a few things after New Day. Last time we did a gallery, I got a gazillion questions, people concerned whether or not they got their submission uploaded. And I found that I just missed a little tick box. And this time you will get an email saying that you successfully uploaded your photo. And so I think, we're trying to smooth out bumps every time we do something.
But this is a different, what we've tried to do with this whole thing is try to make it an immersive, kind of comprehensive community building experience that includes, the Facebook group and the videos and the just the entire. See it as more of an experience rather than just a pattern, and the virtual exhibition is included in that. However, we're doing our best. We're learning things. This is not. We didn't go to school for this.
Marcy, you just submitted and got your confirmation. Thank you for letting me know. I think
that works.
I actually put it up last night, but we didn't announce it. So this morning I thought, did anyone find it? And no one had yet. So you're probably the first, Marcy.
Good.
And so I will, I'll be building the gallery. And as I said, next Friday, you'll all get to see it. There will be an announcement on all our social media feeds of how to see it.
But I will ask, as the wife here, for the person who manages the virtual gallery, please understand that if there's a quirk in the system and it doesn't put your name or whatever in there, that Bill's managing thousands of images, and it's really hard to get 1,000 emails saying, did you get mine? Did you get mine? Did you get mine? Or could you change this? Or
I actually put on the submission form this time that if there is a glitch with the caption, I'm sorry, I can't change it.
Yeah.
So,
we're doing our best.
The pictures will be there.
Yes, exactly.
They will be awesome.
Yes.
Even early on, I thought, should I sort by s'mores and campfire and arrowhead? I'm like, nope. We're just gonna.
I think it's better.
It's gonna be just like walking through the biggest quilt show imaginable.
Yeah.
And again, I want you to be able to take good photos. I will share one little tip that I didn't write down, but I think something that can be challenging if you're photographing a quilt, especially when it's solids. If you're using your phone, one thing that can be very helpful is if you have a white piece of paper and you put it just slightly off to the side so it's in your photo, but you can crop the photo to get the paper out of it, digital cameras and phones look for solid white to balance color. And if you take a picture of a quilt that's all oranges and yellows and reds, and there's nothing white in the picture, you often get really weird things happening. And you look at your phone and you think that doesn't match. Now, trying to get things to match perfectly is really hard, but in general, if your photo doesn't have solid white or sometimes solid black somewhere in the photo, you can almost be guaranteed that the colors will shift. So in our studio, we have what's called a white card. Every photo, there's some pure white that gets cropped out later, but it helps get as true color as possible. But it's never gonna be perfect. Everyone's phone is different. Everyone's computer is different. Like, you're gonna see that if you used a plum background, 5 other people used plum, everyone's plum is gonna look a little different. Right. Everyone's marine will look a little different, and that's fine.
My tip for photographing, for those of you who are photographing outside, is that although it seems counterintuitive and you would think that a sunny day is better, the cloudy day usually produces more accurate color. And if you've washed your quilt and there's texture in it, the texture is going to be a little less severe, and it's not going to conflict as much with the shapes of the pieces.
Because you won't have dark shadows.
So if you have ever seen photographers' lights, they usually have a thin piece of fabric over it to diffuse the light a little bit. And the overcast sky is basically a big light box for you, and it prevents the shadows from becoming so severe and distracting. So even though it might be a glorious blue sky day, especially in the middle of the day, that's going to be even more severe. Sometimes the morning or late evening can work, but the overcast day is a lot easier.
Believe me, we spent a lot of time looking at weather forecasts.
Yes, we do.
Will it be overcast with no wind? We live in Chicago.
Exactly.
It's not as windy as people think, but it is windy.
Yeah.
And so definitely that's great advice. So I think having white that you can crop out, and having basically a nice overcast day is absolutely ideal.
But as Bill said earlier, this is not a photo competition.
No.
And our goal is to celebrate your quilts and any format you have. I think there was some questions we got in Facebook yesterday about the size of the images. Can you just repeat that, please?
On the submission form, there is a maximum size. I don't think it will be an issue for anybody unless you're using kind of professional gear. Basically, if you're taking it with your phone, you're going to be fine. If you get a message trying to upload that it's too large, you'll know. But I don't think with New Day we had any problems, and I'm not going to go into technical stuff here. It's on the submission form.
Unless you're a professional photographer.
Which there are some.
Paparazzi.
Yeah.
If you're a paparazzi photographer.
Yeah. But I also want to reiterate what Weeks said, that it's not a photo competition. We're trying to celebrate your work. The reason we're giving a couple tips isn't to push you to do this. It's that we know you want to represent your work well.
Exactly.
And we know how frustrating it is when you take a photo and the color cast is just really strange. If you look through the group feed, it seems like 30% of the people have a little caveat. There's a photo of their quilt and they're saying, it's a little more green than it looks, or it's a little more purple. And so that white trick is a useful one.
The other thing that we'll tell you is 24 years ago, we were just starting out and we didn't have access to a good place for photos. We would pin up our quilts on the tennis court
on
the sides of the tennis court chain link fence on a cloudy day, and that gets you a really decent photo. So,
but that was stressful because you had to make sure it was cloudy and not windy.
not windy, yes. So Lisa broke her ankle in May and missed 3 planned vacations. I'm so glad you had a virtual one with us.
I hope you're healing.
Yeah, and even though it seems like so long ago now, we just delighted in everyone's good humor and willingness, like campfire chats and the T-shirts and
there are a lot of modern mystery quilt-along T-shirts out there right now, which is what I'm looking forward to is the day when I run into someone wearing one.
Yes.
We'll say a big hi.
So, Donna, how do you pre-register for the next one? Be careful what you wish for. We have a bunch of things in the works right now, and we will be sharing them as soon as all of our ducks are in a row. There are 2 things I can tell you about them. Some of them, this one was all about a pattern that was flexible enough for people to use a variety of fabrics, and the other one too, the New Day, they were about stash and people being able to use their stashes and make a kind of scrappy quilt. Our upcoming quilt-alongs will each have different approaches. And if you even looked between, like the first one we used prints and then this one we used solids. And our goal, not so opaquely, is that we want to, each of the events, to teach you different things, to show you different ways to use fabrics. And some of them will have more flexibility than others. And in terms of your fabric selection and
the structure
and
of
the
the
structure,
event.
yeah.
We
Anne's still awake and sweet.
hey. So we think about these events not as a quilt, but as an experience and with very specific things we want as the foundation, knowing that you all will take it in new directions, but we tweak the structure every time. And so if you're someone who thinks like, well, if you did the first quilt along, you know how different this one was.
Right.
The mystery quilt along. The next will be different again.
And we will have a variety of approaches to the quilting, to the quilt along. I think one of the things that we really learned this time around was that the whole camp narrative and the imagination aspect of this was surprisingly powerful. And not something I've seen before in a camp quilt along.
I've never seen it.
So there will be a narrative for the next.
We're having a
quilt along.
lot of fun already.
But what we have a kind of mantra in our family that when we do something the first time, it sets a dangerous precedent.
That we always do it that way.
And what we're trying to do is kind of the opposite. So
shake it up.
So we may go back to summer camp at some point, but we may do something else also. So just kind of be open, please. Now, the one thing is that Lori Thomas wants to go to the North Carolina mountains.
Oh,
that's one thing we can tell you. That's one thing we can tell you is that we're going to continue to be online because we can reach more people. And we have taught at a lot of retreats and in-person events. but we find that we're able to reach more people this way, and it's
accessible.
Yeah.
But I also see Nancy's question about how long will the T-shirts be available.
Yeah.
I'm not planning to take that down anytime soon, so they're still available.
So Karen Foster's comment about the secret private group was really great for sharing. You know, I was really, you kind of don't know sometimes where things are going to go. It was challenging to me that there were people who wanted to be able to share without realizing that people were moving at different paces, and you don't want to wreck it for people who haven't, who aren't at that stage yet.
Which is why you set that up.
Yeah, which is why I set it up. I kind of go back and forth about the success of having that private group for the last installment.
It seemed very helpful for many people.
Yeah, it was a lot
ton of work for
her. And so I guess we'll have to think about that. But it was challenging to be monitoring multiple groups for the same quilt along. And yet I did feel, and I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about this too, I did feel that for both of the past two quilt alongs, that having the quilt along in a public group was really helpful for people who couldn't participate but wanted to lurk, as they say, in the internet. They wanted to watch from the sidelines, and they wanted to continue to see what people were making, and they wanted to decide whether that they had the skills to participate. So I know most quilt-alongs, I've gotten a lot of feedback about this. Most quilt-alongs are done in a private group, and that would be a lot easier for us to just have one group that's private. But I thought it was really helpful for people to be able to see how it worked and to hear about it, even if they were too busy that summer or they had caregiving responsibilities or whatever.
It's all a balancing act, and I think that in general, that idea that the main group was public really did allow kind of a broader, not just broader range, but more voices to join the discussion. I think we were both very impressed with the level of not just helpfulness, but kind of almost critique, like helping people understand decisions
and
that they were struggling
supporting other people. That's what we really wanted to happen, and you all really, you really brought it in terms of supporting other people. I think it's glad. I'm happy to hear that group was helpful for you, and I've got to think about if there's another way I can come up with to structure it. Part of the challenge is we had a lot of people trying to crash that group who had not purchased the pattern, and so then I was just
every day.
I had to constantly sift through a bunch of people, even though we said it was a private group for the quilt along. There were a lot of people who did not pay for the pattern who would ask to be part of the group, and then I just spent hours and hours and hours sifting through. So I've got to kind of figure out how to do it. But
thank you, Donna. We are always kind of reflecting on what worked, what's a good use of energy, and we will be careful with that. And
I think Nancy's comment about watching from the sidelines would have drawn me in, and the open group is how people joined it. I know it's not how most quilt alongs are done, and I'm really glad to hear you say that, because I think maybe if we just structure it a little bit differently, there might be a more efficient way for me to manage it. But I think kind of having the finishing cabin was a really positive thing for a lot of people.
And motivating.
So,
But I'll also say,
that out.
Another thing is, today, so many of you posted your quilts since it's reveal day. all sorts of people are buying the pattern for the first time because they're seeing your beautiful work.
Exactly.
And so even though they won't be part of the step-by-step process, you have inspired so many people. So thank you.
Debbie Chen has ideas on this subject and can share later if you want. Yes.
Yes. Share.
Yes.
We want to hear.
Yeah. And joining the group can happen at the time of purchase. But the thing is that you don't want to go into that group until you're ready, because then
the final group,
you'll be seeing people. Yeah. So let's talk about it. We'll just continue to
keep
work
giving
it through.
Us, we love your ideas.
Yeah, you're giving us helpful feedback, and we want to make it a great experience for you. So, I think we can figure it out.
Yeah, we will.
However,
quick
one
reminder
thing to tell you.
We told you before, but as a reminder.
Yes. Go ahead.
The 2024 quilt calendar, Art of the Quilt calendar, is now available. There's a link on our website on how to buy it. We're right now, actually last night, I submitted the cover for 2025.
So,
and actually it's a really cool cover.
So
it's a quilt you haven't seen yet.
Just to explain how this works. So we used to sell this, USPS had difficulty delivering them without damage. So we now have a link. It's a affiliate link on our website. If you would go to our website and purchase through that link, that they give us a percentage of that. Otherwise,
yeah. Otherwise, we
don't get much. we don't get much. So, so if you want to purchase this, you can go through our website and use that link. And the patterns for all of the quilts are in this. This is Willow Creek's only activity, as they call it, calendar. All of the others are like puppies.
They have a lot of puppies and
kitties. But if you have like a fishing calendar, you need a fishing calendar for somebody, they have plenty of those too.
The publisher who does this, I want a quick shout out to them. They're in Wisconsin. Yeah. They are awesome to work with.
So great.
We've worked with them for years, and I love supporting another Midwest company that does this. They are so organized. They do really quality printing. And so we're doing it again for next year.
Yes,
if you've never seen it, it's a little, each quilt has a pattern in one size. Some of the quilts have appeared in earlier issues of our magazine. Every calendar has a couple quilts that have not been published anywhere before. But it's a nice, simple set of directions, the beautifully printed color directions that are in a pocket in the back.
I will kind of warn you, however, there are some unscrupulous people on eBay and Etsy for the most part, who get their hands on a calendar and they take they cut it apart, and then they sell each pattern individually. And it's not okay, and we're aware of it. We can't control it. But beware that if somebody on Etsy is trying to sell you one of our patterns, they are not necessarily disclosing that they've cut up our calendar. So
it really annoys.
It's very annoying.
Yeah.
So just kind of buyer beware about people. You can buy from us. We'll give you free shipping. So we can't wait to see more of your quilts, and we're going to get that gallery. The royal we. No, we're going to get the gallery up and running for you. We're going to have some interesting information next month for you.
Yep.
That's all I'm saying about that. But you're going to want to be here next October 1st. I can't believe it.
So thank you so much for all you've done over this really lovely summer.
Yeah, you really. I will say on both of our behalves, you were the highlights of our summer.
Yeah, it was great.
For sure. So,
so now we all need a summer vacation.
I know. But we have lots more fun in store.
So thanks, Lisa. I'm glad it was fun today.
Yes.
And we'll see you all in a month.
Yeah. With lots of news.
Take care. Bye-bye.